What's up, guys? Today I'm talking about watches that slap harder than Will Smith.
Get out.
Guys, it's another episode of What's on My Desk, and you guessed it, I'm going to be talking about Will Smith, a fellow Philadelphian who made quite the impact at the Oscars a couple of weeks ago.
Damn!
So you know what, we figured, let's talk about some watches that make a slap. We have plenty of watches to choose from. Now, what Will Smith did, it's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I'm confused too. We're confused.
Initially, it looked like he was laughing at the joke until Jada gave him that look.
You in danger, girl.
What he could have done instead, he could have just went home, heard out what Jada would have to say, and perhaps gave her a beautiful gift, such as this watch. Now, this particular watch from Piaget, this is their Limelight collection, which is also part of the high jewelry collection. I mean, look at this thing. It's dripping with diamonds. It's got 14 carats of high quality diamonds, 10 carats of emeralds. This thing is absolutely insane. Retail value around $1 million, right? A gift seems fitting for Jada. Certainly something he can afford, but the best part about this watch is that it's a gift that looks like $1 million, but doesn't necessarily have to cost $1 million. The markup from guys like Cartier, Harry Winston, Piaget, who is very famous for these type of over-the-top, really, really shiny, gaudy watches, is that the retails are insane. That's the common denominator. But the resale value on them is not so great, because it's not that easy to find somebody, who would want to wear a watch like this. By the way, she could have worn that to the Oscars, by the way. What do you think? She had a green dress on. That would have matched perfectly. Maybe the next Oscars if they let him in. You don't have to spend $1 million, but you can make $1 million present at a cost of about $200,000. Not a bad deal, and I think that would have went a long way instead of, what'd you say, 10-year ban on Oscars? Yeah. So, yeah, that's probably a good option instead of the whole slap thing.
What the was he thinking?
Now, if you felt like you didn't have a choice and you had to go fight for your woman, if you're gonna go through with it, and if you're gonna make an impact, first of all, I don't know if I go with the forward slap. I probably would have went with a back slap, because a back slap really makes a point. I feel like a back slap is more demeaning than a front slap, if you ask me. And if you're going to do that, I would wear something a little bit heavier. For example, the Offshore brick. Now imagine having this thing on your wrist and doing one of these. Now you're slapping somebody with some heft. Why? Because this thing damn near weighs a pound, right? It weighs like almost 400 grams. I think the newer version, which is what I have here, is 334 grams, if I'm not mistaken. The older version, the yellow gold one, actually weighed a pound, right? It's a brick of solid gold. That's why it's known as the brick. Originally, this watch was released in 2018, 42mm case size. It's made up of 367 parts and has an automatic movement. So if you do slap somebody with it, it might just help you actually wind the watch in the process. Pretty cool. 50-hour power reserve, chronograph functionality. It's large, it's a statement piece that would not only dazzle on a red carpet, but will definitely let everybody know who's the boss, especially if you do a little backhand with that thing on. A watch that's on the market for around that $85,000 mark on a secondary market. It's a fairly good deal considering what some of the other APs are selling for. Again, in today's market, your Offshores are going to be a better deal versus the Royal Oaks like the one I'm wearing. Just to put it in perspective, this Royal Oak in stainless steel on a bracelet sells for $55,000 to $65,000 on the market, and here's an old gold brick that you can pick up for $85,000. Again, heavier, bigger. Royal Oaks are winning. So you can take advantage of that. Now I have a question for the audience. Well, I don't really have an audience here. Chelsea, what's more open than Will Smith's marriage?
Maybe our next watch?
Perhaps our next watch. Thank you, Chelsea. And our next watch is a Michel Jordi, or we like to call it Michael Jordan because Michel Jordi doesn't roll off the tongue in the United States of America. It actually opens up. We call it a twofer. You get 2 for 1, so 2 watches in one. If you see what I mean, right? And it's a really cool concept. And the reason it's a cool concept because the watchmaker himself, Michel Jordi, is actually a very, very cool watchmaker. So this guy is like 2nd or 3rd generation watchmaker because he was born to a watchmaker in Switzerland in 1948, and then in 1988. Roman Sharf came to the United States of America as a refugee from Soviet Union. But also in 1988 is when Michel Jordi launched his brand called Michel Jordi. Very creative, I know. And his claim to fame was the Le Clip watch. Now, Le Clip was a fashion watch. It was pretty popular back in the day. It was made in the shape of a clothespin that was to be worn everywhere except on the wrist, kind of like a pop-up art piece, if you will. And he received the Grand Prix Triomphe for European excellence in Monte Carlo in 1986. Now, people like Andy Warhol wore this watch. Keith Haring designed one. Celebs like Quincy Jones, George Benson, and Carlos Santana were seen wearing it. I think you can still pick them up today pretty cheap here and there on eBay, if I'm not mistaken. That is actually a really cool watch. 2004, the Red Sox break the curse, the Babe Ruth curse, and finally win the World Series. 2004 is also the year Martha Stewart went to jail and Michel Jordi entered the world of fine watchmaking by creating the watch called the Twins. Some people refer to this watch as the double-decker because, again, this watch fans out, opens up, and you get 2 time zones and movements with complications, including the world's smallest monopusher chronograph movement. So this is the world's smallest single pusher chronograph. Monopusher is single pusher, so there's no 2 pushers, as you can see. This particular watch is 18 karat yellow gold. It's 45 millimeters, and it's also quite tall. It sits very tall on the wrist. If I compare this to the brick, for example, you'll notice this watch sits quite a bit higher, probably a good 3-4 millimeters higher, and rightfully so, because you're technically wearing 2 watches in one. Now, it's a pretty quirky watch, right? Not everybody's cup of tea, but I always say there's an ass for every seat. But as a result of that, this thing came out retailing at $93,000. You can pick these things up around the $20,000 mark. Again, a pretty smoking deal. Another terrible joke I'm sure you guys read on the internet. Why did Will Smith open-handedly slap Chris Rock? It's because paper beats rock. Yeah, I know, corny, but it was funny the first time I read it. Or the second time. That brings me to my next watch, which is paper thin, and this is the RM6702. This is the limited edition Van. It's Van, think knee. Van Niekerk. That's exactly how it's pronounced. This thing weighs 32 grams. That's right, it's 32 grams. It's literally the weight of a standard light bulb. Now, Richard Mille talks about this watch as RM's most wearable watch. Now, I don't know if it has to do with the fact that it literally has an underwear elastic for a man, which, by the way, people made fun of this thing. I had a client that asked me for a replacement one of these. I could not find one for the life of me. They're forever on back order, and if you actually want one, people are charging like $5,000-$7,000 just for this piece of elastic right here. But I will agree with the fact that this is the most wearable watch. You do not feel this watch on your wrist at all. In fact, I've worn the blue version of this, and I was almost afraid that I would forget that the watch is on my wrist and bang it into something or take it off somewhere and forget that it's back on my wrist. It's that light, and it is the most wearable RM out there. I will give him that. It has a skeletonized dial with a green and yellow color palette for Wade Van Niekerk, who is a South African track and field sprinter. This guy holds a record for men's 400-meter sprint. He ran it in 43.03 seconds. That's 33.5 miles an hour, just to put it in perspective. And that puts him in line with like a cheetah or an emo. I think emo runs at like 31, 32 miles an hour. That's pretty insane. Imagine if he was the one slapping Chris Rock. It'd be a fast slap. You'd be like in and out like Flash. You would have to like replay it in slow-mo. There are a few versions of this watch. To date, there are 5, and they all pay tribute to a famous athlete. There's Mutaz Barshim edition. He's a high jumper from Qatar. That's the burgundy one. Fernando Alonso's, who's a Spanish racing driver, his watch is blue. Alexis Pinturault, he's an alpine skier from France. That one is white. And then there's Alexander Zverev, who is a tennis player for Germany, and that one is carbon black. 25 jewels, 50-hour power reserve, original retailed for $168,000. I believe today's market price on this watch is $350,000. So double list. Not bad considering some RMs are triple and quadruple list. So this one is actually a deal. Let's talk a little bit about what the stars were wearing on the carpet. There was a lot of Cartier. Uma Thurman was wearing Cartier watch along with a lot of jewelry. Jake Gyllenhaal? Jake Gyllenhaal was wearing a Cartier watch, and of course Will Smith. But when I look at some of the models, specifically Will Smith was wearing the Cartier Drive, which is a watch that retails, I think, around $10,000. Look, the Oscars is the most prestigious award show out there. Now, if I'm Cartier and I'm paying movie stars a ton of money to wear something, why not show the world how big your dick is and put on something that's a bit more expensive? For example, the Cartier that I brought. This is a Cartier Rotundo single pusher chronograph tourbillon. If I'm a company and I'm producing watches or I'm producing clothing, I'm gonna show the best of the best of the best.
We're here because you're looking for the best of the best of the best, sir.
Also something exclusive. This watch was released in 2005, I believe. It's a limited edition of 50 pieces. And from a technical perspective, it's very impressive. It boasted 9431 manual wind movement from Cartier, so it's their in-house movement. It was their way to show the world that, look, we're not just a pretty jewelry house, right? We don't just make Cartier love bracelet and nail bracelets, and now they have like nuts and bolts bracelet. They're really taking the whole construction thing to the next level, Cartier. This particular movement combined two key complications: the single push piece chronograph, as I mentioned, and the tourbillon, which is not an easy thing to do. A monopusher chronograph is a very big to-do complication, and to combine it with a tourbillon, again, for a house seemingly being a jewelry house mainly, right? And again, seems to be that the theme of the show is deals upon deals upon deals, and this one is also a deal. This thing I think retails somewhere around just under $200,000, and you pick these up online, usually about a third of the cost. So to get serious for a second, I really was torn between whether what Will Smith was the right or the wrong thing to do. Personally, I'm a huge fan of Will Smith. He's a fellow Philadelphian. If someone did say something like that to my wife, I would probably tend to defend my wife. I don't necessarily know if I would get violent specifically. I would go somewhere backstage, say my piece to Chris Rock, and say that that was a bit of a low blow, which I do believe it was a low blow, but still doesn't give Will the excuse to do what he would have done. It's easy to judge people from the side, but put yourself in that situation. I think most people wouldn't know how they would particularly act, and I would leave it at that. But you guys comment below and let me know how you feel about it. Other than that, I want to thank you for tuning in. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. Slap the like button, pun intended. Hit the subscribe button if you can. Share this video with your friends. This is what helps our channel grow. And I'll see you guys next time on another edition of What's on My Desk.